Catholic Church. What draws you to it and sustains you?
I had the normal experience and difficulties with that church, you know, like everyone who's Catholic had, rebellion and so on. But what really hits me about that church, and it still does today, is that that church has a sense of our human dignity. It really does. And it also has a sense of the mystery of life. As dumb as they often are, you know, the fruity monsignors running around with women's robes on and stuff. I mean, all that stuff is comical, as George Collins says very well. But there is a sense of human, the mystery of who we really are. And that church hits it, and they will not budge on that. My old analyst once terrified me. He said, "You're going to end up Catholic again." I said, "What?" I said, "No." He said, "Yes, you are." I said, "What?" I said, "You're supposed to be an analyst. You're supposed to just listen to my dreams." He said, "You will." I said, "Oh, God, don't lay that on me." I couldn't care less, actually. I really couldn't. I mean, one way or another. I sometimes go to Mass with my son and stuff and just sit there. Not much, but sometimes I do. They have a quality to them. And they have men like Aquinas and women like Teresa of Avila. Those are real human beings. And they have a tradition that, to me, is like one of the great human experiences. I don't know if I believe in it, personally, but I don't write them off. I really don't.
American poets, you mentioned a little bit about the Irish. American poets have been accused of writing with a curious sense of isolation from each other. In Ireland, new books of poetry editions sell out quickly, and poems are quoted in newspapers by politicians. Do you think we'll ever have that kind of reception here?
In Europe and also in the Orient, as you know, like there are statesmen who write poems. Mao Zedong wrote poetry, and so did the Ho Chi Minh. And they published poetry in their own time, in their own, you know, as dictators or whatever the hell they were. They write poetry. In Russia, a book of poetry would be a bestseller. In Ireland, too. In our country, we're a different kind of people in the sense that we're still frontier people. The bottom line is this, that we're not that much in touch with our feelings. I really think that. Poetry talks to the soul, and people who read it understand that, and it talks to them in different ways, like all art does. Paintings and sculpture or dancing or whatever, music. But our country, we feel that we've got to get on with it. Get on with the business, and as I told you, I'm not against business. My dad was a businessman, but it's limited. And so we're nervous about our feelings, and we tend to downgrade them. If a person says, "I really feel this or that," we don't talk about those things in our families and in our culture. So I think it'll be a long time before America actually gets to poetry. I think it will, if we're still around, you know. But like the two best poets we've ever known is Whitman and Emily Dickinson. Those are the great American poets. No one reads them except in high school or something.
Paul, we've come a long way in this interview. Tell me, who do you admire? Who are your heroes?
I love Socrates. I believe everything he says. And Christ is another. Everything he says. Some of the great philosophers, as best I could understand them, like Aquinas, and Augustine and Nietzsche and all the poets from Homer down. They're my heroes. And my father, he's a real hero of mine.
How do you want to be remembered?
I just want my son and my wife to remember me as a fairly decent guy. Really. And period.
Randall Jarrell said that a good poet is someone who manages in a lifetime of standing out in thunderstorms to be struck by lightning 5 or 6 times, a dozen or 2 dozen times, and he is great, he said. Paul Carroll is someone who's had a lifetime of standing out in thunderstorms. The warm glow that surrounds him will not be diminished for a long time as he lights the way for other young poets and makes the world better for all of us.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Really, I appreciate that.
Take your hand there.
I appreciate that. I feel like my father's son.